Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Montague here, and in this video we are going to go over Unit 4, Lesson 7, Conditionals Practice, or again, at least part of it. In the last video we did Lesson 7, Option A, which was the MindEase app. And in this lesson we are going to do Option B, this VeloCity app. All right, so if you remember from the last time, the first bubble gives us the working version of the app so we can play with it a little bit and see what happens. We also have our user stories involved in these types of lessons. So for this VeloCity Ride app, the user story for this one says that I don't have a car, so I need to rely on using alternative means of transportation. I love to rent bikes and scooters to get around, but it's not clear up front how much I will be paying to rent them since the pricing seems to change all the time. All right, so we are going to be building this VeloCity Ride app so you can rent a bike or scooter and know right off the bat how much you're going to be paying for that bike or scooter. So let's go ahead and run the app and see how it works. All right, so we need to select either bike or scooter. So let's select bike. Let's say we're going to go on a 15-minute ride, and let's say it is a Thursday, and we don't have a promo code. So let's click on this Get a Ride button, and it tells us that it is going to be $2 for the ride that we are going to take on this bike we're renting. All right, we can increase the length of our ride. So let's go up to, let's say, 45 minutes. If I can find the 45. All right, and when we get a ride this time, it's $8. If we switch over to scooter, also a ride of 45 minutes on a Thursday, it's $10. Let's go ahead and see on a weekend day. Looks like it's still $10 for a scooter and still $8 for a bike. So it doesn't seem like the weekend day is changing anything. Oh, and then here in the instructions, it also gives us the promo code First Ride and Study Move. So let's go ahead and see if any of these things work. So I'm going to say we're going to do a bike ride for 45 minutes on Monday. Let's try this First Ride promo code. And I'm going to type it in exactly as they have it here with a capital F and a capital R for first and ride, all one word. So when I get a ride that time, that reduced the price to $6.40. So it must be applying a discount for the first time I rent a bike. Let's see what happens when I put in Study Move and get a ride, and that reduces our price to $4.80 if we're doing a 45-minute bike ride on a Monday. Let's see what happens when we switch it to scooter. Let's go down to 30 minutes, and let's see what happens on a Saturday. We get a $6 ride. All right, so just depending on whatever inputs we put in here is going to depend on what price we get outputted to us. So the purpose of the app, obviously, is to let us see how much it's going to be to rent either a bike or a scooter from this company. And with the functionality of the app, right, we are inputting if we want a bike or a scooter, how long we're riding for, and the day of the week, as well as any promo codes we have, and then it outputs a price to us, right? So it is just taking all of this information in and then giving us the overall price for our specific needs. All right. So let's go ahead and finish on this first bubble, and we're going to continue on to bubble number 2, where we will do our first little bit of coding for the VeloCity Ride app. All right, so this is Milestone 1. Let's take a look at what we have to do here. All right, our user story on this one says, I need to be able to use the drop downs and text boxes on the app screen to input information into the app. So this first milestone, we need to look at the elements to get a sense of where the user inputs information, right? We already went over this a little bit. We have the bike or the scooter, the ride duration, the day of the week, as well as the promo code. All right. And then in lines 1 through 7, this is where our variables are being created. So we know that a few of these are going to be updated based on the input. So we have the duration, the day, the promo code, and probably also this ride type as things that are updated with user input. But let's go ahead and see the last of these directions. It says we get the needed user input values and assign them to the appropriate variables. All right, so we have our get text and our get number blocks that we will be using here. Okay, and milestone 1 starts on line 10 here. It says we need to assign values to the variables for duration, day, and promo code based on user input. All right, so we don't need to actually worry about the whether or not we select a bike or scooter because that's being handled in this first conditional down here that gets the value from the radio buttons and saves it into the variable for ride type. So our get checked bike radio button determines if it's a bike or a scooter. So that one we don't have to actually update, but we do need to update the duration, the day of the week, as well as the promo code. So let's go ahead and get the variable assignment blocks in here. I'm going to pull in 3 because we have 3 variables we're updating, which are duration, day, and promo code. All right, so those 3 variables are going to be either a get number or a get text. So over in our UI controls, we have our get number and get text. For duration, that should be a get number because this dropdown only has numbers that we can choose from. So we're going to do a get number from our minute dropdown is what that is called. Oop, not logo image, minute dropdown. All right, day, that's going to be text-based, right? Because we have the strings in here for each day of the week. All right, so this one is going to be equal to a get text, and we are getting text from the day dropdown, right? Remember when you hover over the elements on the screen, it tells you the name. All right, and then we have the place where we can enter the promo code, which is also going to be text-based. So we're going to do a get text, and this is called the code input. So we're going to get text from the code input box. All right, so that is the last of our instructions, but we do want to test it before we move on. So we are going to expand our debug console a little bit, and we are going to put in the variable watchers for duration, day, and promo code. All right, so now we can run it. And when I select certain options on here, let's put in our last one, study move that we had. All right, when I click on the get a ride button, it should update my variables. So duration is 6, which is what I put in. Day is equal to Wednesday, which is what I put in. And then our promo code is equal to study move, which is also what I put in here. So it looks like we are good to go to finish and move on to the next bubble. All right, bubble 3 is milestone 2. So let's look at our user story for this one, which says, I want to know the base price for the ride depending on whether I choose a bike or a scooter so I can make a more informed choice based on my budget. All right, so for this one, we need something that says for users that have selected the bike radio button, set the base rate to 2. Otherwise, we need to set the base rate to 4, which is the base rate for scooters. All right, so this is going to be dealing with our ride type variable, right, that has already been assigned here in lines 19 through 23. So if we check the bike radio button, it sets our ride type to bike. Otherwise, it sets our ride type to scooter. So our ride type should be able to tell us what we're doing. So we're down here in milestone 2. All right, to complete this conditional statement, to assign the appropriate value to the variable base rate. So bikes have a base rate of 2, scooters have a base rate of 4. All right, so we already know that our base rates are going to be 2 and 4, so I can just go ahead and put that in already. And then we need to determine if our ride type is equal to bike. So again, just like the Mindies app that we did in the last video, The instructions give us exactly what we need for our Boolean expression right here. So ride type is equal to bike. I'm just going to copy that from the instructions and put that into our conditional statement here. So if our ride type is equal to bike, our base rate is going to be set to 2. If it's not equal to bike, we're going to look at this else line and set the base rate to 4. All right, so that is really it for this bubble. That's all we needed to do. Okay, so we are just going to go ahead and do another test here. And we are going to put the base rate variable into our watchers list. So we can then run the app. And when I get get a ride, all right, when I say bike, it gives me the amount of 2, and we can see that updated in our watchers as well as on the screen. If I select scooter, it sets the base rate to 4. So we can see that that variable did in fact change both on the screen and in our watchers. So we are setting the correct base rate for either a bike or a scooter. All right, so let's go ahead and finish on this bubble. And we'll move on to bubble 4, which is milestone 3. All right, for bubble 4, our user story says, I want to know whether or not it's a weekend, since sometimes rental companies offer discounts based on the day of the week. All right, so this is definitely going to be another conditional statement. All right, so we set our day of the week preference to Saturday or Sunday. We set the value of is weekend to true. Otherwise, is weekend is going to be set to false. So we're going to use an if-else statement with the equality operator and the logical operator or to create the statement. And it says exactly right here what we need, right? If day is equal to Saturday or day is equal to Sunday, then we are going to set our is weekend to true, else is weekend is going to be false. So if we remember from a prior lesson, I can't remember which one it is, but we don't want to do this in English, or how we would say it in English, right? Because if I was saying it just in English and not in a programming language, I would say if the day is equal to Saturday or Sunday. But we want to be specific with this. So if day is equal to Saturday or day is equal to Sunday is as specific as we can possibly be, right? So those are the two options for the day to be equal to if it's the weekend. Sometimes it will work if you get rid of the day is equal to portion right here and you just have the day equal to Saturday or Sunday. I've seen some instances of that working, but more often than not, it is going to cause an issue in your code. So you want to have it worded exactly like they have it here so the program understands it. All right. So then once we have that Boolean expression, then we assign the value of true to is weekend, or we assign the value of false to is weekend. All right. So this is milestone 3. We need to scroll down to milestone 3. All right, so we are going to pull in our conditional from our control toolbox, and we do need an if-else statement because if this is true, this is going to happen. Otherwise, something else is going to happen. All right, so we can copy. Well, I can't copy and paste it, but we can look at this example picture up here and type in exactly what they have here. Or you can also pull in your math blocks. So I'll go ahead and pull in our math blocks. All right, so we know we need an or. I'm going to put that in first. All right, and then we're going to need two equal to operators on either side of this or statement. Okay, so if our day is equal to Saturday, or our day is equal to Sunday. All right, and I'm just literally doing exactly what they show here in the example. Okay, so if our day is equal to Saturday or our day is equal to Sunday, we need to update our variable for is weekend. Okay, so is weekend is going to be equal to true if it's Saturday or Sunday. Otherwise, is weekend is going to be equal to false. All right, and now note that you do not need to have quotation marks around your words true and false because that is returning a Boolean value. So that can be read Even though it's a string, it can be read just like you would a number input or a variable input that you're calling, because it is giving us that Boolean value of true or false. So you don't need quotation marks there, just as a side note. All right, so we are going to go ahead and test this code to make sure it's working. That's all that we needed to do. All right, so we're going to add our isWeekend variable to the watchers down here. So isWeekend gets added to our watcher. All right, and then we are going to click on the Get a Ride button after using the day dropdown to determine if it's a weekend or not. All right, so if I keep it on Monday and click on Get a Ride, it is telling me isWeekend is false, which is correct, right? Because Monday is not a weekend day. All right, if I select Saturday and say Get a Ride, isWeekend is set to true. All right, and that is correct. You can test all of the other days if you want to as well. Sunday makes it true. Tuesday makes it false. But anything Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday should give us a false value. Saturday, Sunday are the only ones that give us the true value. So it looks like we're working good. We're going to go ahead and finish this one and move on to bubble number 5. All right, bubble 5 is milestone 4, and our user story for this one says, I know that the longer I ride the bike or scooter, the more expensive it becomes. Therefore, I want this app to accurately predict how much I might pay based on my ride's duration. All right, so this is where we're going to pull in that duration variable. All right, so we're going to have an if-else conditional statement to calculate the price of the ride based on the following structure. All right, so if our duration is any minutes between 0 through 20, we just get charged the base rate. If it's a duration of 21 minutes or through 40 minutes, we get the base rate plus $2. And if it's a duration anything longer than 40 minutes, so 41 minutes and up, we get our base rate plus $4. All right. So we need to update this price variable based on the duration of our ride, and we are going to do that down here in milestone 4. So it looks like they already have the conditional in here for us. So all we need to do is go ahead and write our Boolean expressions to determine what our price is going to be. All right. So for this one, we want to start with the most specific case first. And in this case, the most specific case is going to be our duration being over 40 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to start with our duration. Okay, our duration needs to be greater than 40. All right, for our price to be equal to our base rate plus 4. All right, because we're adding $4 to that base rate. All right, next we can look at the middle tier of this, which is our anything that is over 20 minutes, so 21 minutes and up. All right, I don't need to put the second half of this. I don't need a less than or equal to 40 for this, because if it's greater than 40 minutes, it's already going to pick up that this is true in the top tier and apply this price. All right, so this time if our duration is greater than 20 minutes, all right, it is going to set our price to be our base rate plus 2. All right, so that gets the most specific case of our duration being over 40, followed by the next specific case of our duration greater than 20. All right, and then for our final tier of the conditional, we don't need to even have anything in here because it's just the base rate, right? We don't add anything to the base rate, and if it's not over 40 minutes, that's going to be false and skip line 51. If it's not over 20 minutes, that's going to be false and skip line 53, and then default to line 55, which is the base rate. All right, so we don't need to actually have a Boolean expression for that last tier. Again, when you expand the instructions on these, it gets pretty dang specific about what exactly you need to have in there. Okay, so it gives you the Boolean expression, it gives you the price is equal to base rate plus 2, it gives you all of the information that you need. All right, so read through the instructions closely. If you're having any issues following along, make sure that you see what you are doing in that area. All right, so our duration over 40, we get base rate plus 4, over 20, base rate plus 2, otherwise it's the base rate, and now we need to test. All right, so we're going to add our price variable to our watchers down here. All right, and we are going to change the duration a few different times and see what happens to our price. All right, so I'm going to say, let's start with 5 minutes. All right, so that's not going to be over 40 and that's not going to be over 20. So that should default just to our base rate. So when I click on get a ride, it gives me $4 as the price and $4 as the price down here. And that's assuming that I'm riding a scooter because I have not selected bike. Okay, so it's giving me the base rate for the scooter. If I select bike, that base rate changes to $2. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what happens when we get anything over 20 minutes. So let's go with 30 minutes because that's right between 20 and 40. All right, so if we're riding for 30 minutes, that should be our base rate plus 4. So when we're biking, that should be, our base rate plus 2. So when we're biking, that should be 2, a base rate of 2, and then we're adding 2, so we get $4, and we see that that is correct on the screen. All right, and then anything over 40 minutes, we are adding $4 to our base rate. So with our bike, our base rate is 2, we're adding 4, so we should get 6 as our outputted price, which is what we are seeing. So it looks like we're doing good. And remember that will change slightly if you select a scooter because that is a base rate of $4. So a 45-minute ride on a scooter is going to be $8. A 30-minute ride on a scooter should be $6. And a less than 20-minute ride on a scooter should be $4. So it looks like everything is working as it should based on this conditional that we've written. All right, so if you don't have any questions, we're going to move on to bubble number 6. All right, milestone number 5 here. So the user story that we have says that knowing when to use the right promo codes at the right time will save me a ton of money. So I want the app to reflect this change in price if I have a promo code. All right, so let's look at the instructions. So according to the table that they have provided below, we are going to display the appropriate discounted price to the user depending on the values of the following variables: promo code, ride type, and is weekend. All right, so we have the promo code first ride. It gives us $2 off only on bikes, and that can be any day of the week. So it doesn't apply to scooters. It's only if we have a bike. We have the promo code study move, which gives us $3 off. That applies to both a bike and a scooter and applies for Mondays through Fridays. All right, we also have the weekend scoot discount code, which is $1 off just for a scooter, and that only applies for Saturdays and Sundays. Okay, so they have the steps broken down a little bit more down here. Okay, so remember when you expand each of these sections, it's going to tell you pretty much exactly what you need to do with examples. Okay, so you can read through those if you need any further explanation than what I provide. All right, but all of that is going to give you very specific examples of what you need to do. All right, so we're going to scroll all the way down here to milestone 5. All right, it gives us our chart over here as well for our first ride, study move, and weekend scoot promo codes. And we are going to need to add our conditional statement. So I'm going to start with an if-else. For this one, we will need to expand our options here a little bit. All right, but we'll just start with 2 tiers and see what we need from here. All right, so the first tier, we're going to deal with our promo code first ride. This is one of those cases where we don't really have anything that's more specific than anything else. It's just whether or not these things are going to be true. So we are going to be using quite a few and statements in here, right? Because this thing and this thing also has to be true. All right. So our first ride, the things that we need to look at specifically, right? We need to have the correct promo code first, right? So we have our promo code variable, okay? And our promo code needs to be equal to first ride, right? Because that's what the promo code is, capital F, capital R. So if we have that correct promo code, we should get the discount. All right, but we also need to make sure that we are riding a bike because this first ride promo code does not apply to a scooter. Okay, so if I have the promo code first ride and my ride type is also equal to bike, then I should be getting this discount. Okay, so we would set our price variable to be equal to our price minus 2, right? Because this one gives us $2 off. Okay, we don't have to do anything about the day of the week because this applies to any day of the week. So just having our correct promo code and our correct ride type in here is enough to get us this discounted price. All right, we do have another promo code. We have 3 promo codes, so I do need another tier to this conditional. So I'm going to add a plus as well to get us another tier to this conditional statement. All right, so for our second tier, we're going to look at the study move promo code. So again, we're going to start with our promo code, right? Our promo code needs to be equal to study move this time, all one word with a capital S and a capital M. Okay, so we need our study move promo code. This applies to bike and scooter. So for this one, I'm not going to need to specify a ride type. But I am going to need to specify if the weekend or if it's a weekend day because this only applies to Monday through Friday. So if it's a Saturday or Sunday, I do not want this promo code to be applied. All right, so we have this in here, and then we need an and between them. Okay, so let's get over here to the end of this and add an and statement. All right, now this is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so we have our operator over here not equal to. Okay, but we also have this operator down here, which is called the not Boolean operator. So this is not one that we have used yet, but it is something that can apply and work really well in this situation because the exclamation mark with the blank just means not. And whatever the blank is, that's what it's not. All right, so we have this variable called is weekend, right? We want it to not be the weekend. So we can say not is weekend because if is weekend is equal to true, we don't want that, right? But if we say not is weekend, if I can type over here, okay, not is weekend, okay? So if weekend is not true, right, then we are going to get this promo code. All right, so that's the actual only thing that we need over here. We don't need the not equal to. If we weren't using this is weekend, we could potentially use that not equal to, but this not is actually the better choice for this particular instance. It is something we learned about in the conditionals introduction lesson, but I don't know that we ever use this in any bubbles other than this one. All right, so if not weekend, all right, then we are getting our price for the study move variable. Hopefully that made sense. That was kind of a convoluted explanation, but here we are. All right, so this study move gives us $3 off the price. So our price is equal to price minus 3, okay? So if we have the study move and it is the weekend, we get price minus 3. All right, and again, we don't need that ride type to be determined because it applies to both a bike and a scooter. All right, now For the last tier of our conditional, in this particular case, we cannot just leave it as an else statement because we need to make sure that the promo code being entered is weekend scoot. If I put just an else down here with a price is equal to price minus 1 with nothing else in it, if they don't have the promo code first ride and if they don't have the promo code study move, it's just going to automatically default to this last tier, which means they're going to get $1 off even though they didn't actually enter a promo code. So unlike some of the other examples we've seen, we actually do need to have a Boolean expression down here for the last tier of the conditional. All right, so I've added another tier, a fourth tier down here, to give me this space for an else if statement. Okay, so this time I need to make my promo code be equal to weekend scoot. Weekend Scott. All right, so weekend scoot. This time I also need to specify my ride type, right? Because if my ride type is equal to scooter, right, that's what I need this to be because a weekend scoot code only applies to scooters. So my ride type needs to be equal to a scooter, because if it's a bike, this doesn't apply a discount. All right, and then for this one, we actually need another section for this Boolean expression because we also need to determine if it's a Saturday or a Sunday. All right, so we need the weekend scoot promo code and we need the ride type to be equal to scooter, and we also need is weekend to be true. All right, so again, I can just simply put in this is weekend variable, right? Because this is set to either true or false. So if weekend is true, right, then it's going to give us this discounted price. Okay, so we have these three sections to this Boolean expression to make sure that we have the right promo code, the right ride type, and whether or not it's the weekend. All right, and if all of those things are true, we are going to get the -1 to our price, which we have set here. All right, and then we don't need this fourth tier of the conditional because we don't have any other promo codes that we're coding into this, right? So I can just simply minus this last tier, and we end up with this lovely three-tiered conditional statement here, or three sections of a conditional statement. Again, however you want to word it. I've always called them tiers. It's not going to change now. All right, so they've given us all the patterns. We can see that everything in this app should be working at this point. All right, this was the last major milestone until we get to bubble 7, which is where you can choose some additional things that you want to change about this app yourself. But this is the last official thing that we're going to cover in this video, so we are ready for fully testing the app. All right, so they give us a handy dandy chart down here for us to get a few different options to make sure everything is working correctly. All right, so these are our test cases. So we're going to run the app. For my first test case, I want a bike. I'm going to bike for 20 minutes. It's a Saturday. And I'm going to put in the promo code first ride. Okay, when I click on get ride, it should be $0 free. All right, and that is what we get. All right, for our second option, we are going to do a bike for 45 minutes. So let's go up to 45 minutes. It is a Friday, and we are going to put in the promo code study move. Now, when I click to get a ride on this, we should get $3, which is what we get here. All right, so that one's working. All right, next we're going to look at a scooter ride for 35 minutes on a Monday. And we're going to put in the promo code first ride. Okay, but if we remember, first ride is only applicable to bikes. So we are just going to get the default price with no discount of $6. All right, and then our final test case here is if we are riding a scooter. It's $35 or 35 minutes. It's a Saturday, so let's change it to Saturday here. And our promo code is going to be weekend scoot. Ooh, I keep wanting to put weekend Scott. All right, weekend scoot. So this one should be $5. And that is what we get. Because if we remember, our normal weekend scoot with a ride duration of 35 minutes would have been, I think, $6. So we got $1 off with our weekend scoot promo code. All right, so we should be good to go on this one. It did tell us to add a watcher for price, but I didn't do that because price is displaying on the screen. So we are seeing actively what that price variable is set to without using the watcher. So all of our test cases worked correctly. We are able to move on then to bubble number 7. All right, and just like our Mindies app, I am not going to actually go over Bubble 7 with you because this is where you can pick what you would like to do. All right, so it gives you a few options of possible ways you can continue to modify and extend your app. So you're going to want to pick one of these options. So you can update the user experience. It gives you the suggestions of using a drop-down element for users to select the amount of time they want to ride. The scooter is not an ideal choice, so we could make a UI change to make it a slider instead of a drop-down. Right? So you can see that they've changed it to a slider there. So that's an option. You would have to go to design mode to do that one. You can also refactor your code. So you can write the logic a little bit differently. You could do the same app functionality with easier to follow code or fewer lines of code overall. There are a few things that you could completely get rid of, such as we don't necessarily need this is weekend value. We don't necessarily need the base rate value because we can handle all of this by just using that price variable. And we can also handle whether or not it's a weekend by just doing Boolean expressions for what day it is. So you can get rid of some of those variables and simplify things a little bit that way. You can also choose to add new features. So it looks like they did not maybe update this for the VeloCity ride because these instructions are still saying that we could add new features other than stress, happiness, and time, which is what we were doing for our Mindies app. So think of other ways that you could update this VeloCity ride app. To add additional features, you could come up with your own promo code. You could maybe have like an account creation portion of it. So if they have an account, they get a different price, anything like that. You could also kind of play around with. So consider what you want to do. They give you multiple options of how you could extend this. So it is up to you to determine what you want to do here on bubble number 7. Again, bubbles number 8 and 9 are check for understanding questions, so you can also handle those on your own. I have full faith in you. All right, but that is it for this VeloCity ride app. So in the next video, we will be covering the final option for this lesson, option C, which is the ticks finder. So I will see you guys for the next one.